Imagine a quiet suburban neighborhood in Abbottabad, Pakistan, a place that looks ordinary at first glance, with modest houses, tree-lined streets, and the hum of everyday life. But hidden behind high walls and guarded gates lies one of the most secretive and controversial figures in modern history. Osama bin Laden. From 2005 to 2011, he managed to live in this heavily fortified compound, avoiding detection by the world's most powerful intelligence agencies. Despite being the most wanted man on the planet, bin Laden maintained a low profile, carefully controlling who entered and left his sanctuary, while still living alongside his family and trusted couriers. This was no ordinary hideout. The compound was designed to shield its residents from prying eyes and technological surveillance. Bin Laden had no internet or mobile phones inside, relying entirely on couriers to communicate with the outside world. The world thought he was hiding in remote mountain caves, yet he had created a secure home in a suburban area, blending secrecy with domestic life within these walls. Children learned, families lived, and plans were quietly written, revealing a side of history that few ever imagined. In today's video, we will take you inside this hidden world, exploring how bin Laden evaded capture for nearly a decade, the intelligence breakthroughs that finally led to the operation, and the extraordinary risks involved in one of the most daring missions of the 21st century. You will see how patience, strategy, and persistence shaped a story that captivated the globe. If you want to uncover the full story behind the bin Laden raid and understand the intelligence efforts, personal stories, and high-stakes decisions involved, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you do not miss any of our deep dive history content. After the tragic events of September 11, 2001, the hunt for Osama bin Laden became the top priority for U.S. intelligence. Yet the path to finding him proved far more complex and frustrating than anyone could have anticipated. The CIA, armed with the full resources of the world's most powerful intelligence apparatus, faced an elusive adversary whose ability to blend into ordinary life in remote regions of Pakistan defied conventional tracking methods. For years, agents combed through mountains, tribal villages, and border regions, following leads that often evaporated into dead ends or misleading trails, while bin Laden quietly orchestrated his communications through trusted couriers. The irony was stark. Despite unprecedented surveillance technology, countless operatives, and billions of dollars invested in the search, bin Laden remained almost entirely undetected, hiding in plain sight within a suburban compound that appeared unremarkable to outsiders. Complicating the search were the shifting priorities and distractions that drew attention and resources elsewhere. The 2003 invasion of Iraq, along with the prolonged aftermath of that conflict, diverted both funding and focus from the hunt in Afghanistan and Pakistan. The public, fatigued by ongoing wars and the political turbulence they caused, was less engaged with the painstakingly slow progress of intelligence efforts, adding a layer of pressure and scrutiny on the agencies involved. Analysts had to sift through mountains of data, satellite images, intercepted communications, human intelligence reports, while knowing that even the smallest misstep could allow their target to remain hidden indefinitely. Within the CS walls, teams of dedicated analysts worked tirelessly to identify patterns, connections, and anomalies, yet they were often operating with incomplete or ambiguous information, forced to make educated guesses about the movements of a man who had spent years perfecting his ability to evade detection. The frustration was not merely operational. It carried a psychological weight that tested the resolve of the people charged with hunting bin Laden. Each failed lead, each inconclusive tip, became a reminder of how cunningly he had insulated himself from capture. Even when satellite imagery revealed compounds that might be suspicious, It was difficult to discern which structures were legitimate threats and which were ordinary homes. The reliance on couriers as intermediaries in his communication network became a critical insight. But identifying and tracking these individuals required patience, meticulous observation, and the ability to think like a man who had mastered secrecy over decades. This relentless cat-and-mouse game, played across vast terrain and through layers of cultural, linguistic, and logistical complexity, became a defining challenge for U. Intelligence in the years following 9/11, highlighting not only the limitations of technology and manpower, but also the intricate human factors that govern the success or failure of high-stakes operations. Throughout this period, bin Laden's apparent invisibility created an almost paradoxical sense of omnipresence. He was everywhere in the public imagination, yet nowhere in reality. A ghost navigating the shadows while the world searched desperately for him. The decade-long pursuit revealed the profound difficulty of counterterrorism in a globalized, interconnected world, demonstrating that even the most sophisticated intelligence agencies must contend with human ingenuity, patience, and careful planning. It was a race defined by the tension between an unstoppable will to find justice and an equally determined will to evade capture. A narrative that set the stage for the eventual breakthroughs that would finally bring the world's most wanted man into the spotlight of history. As the years passed and the CIA continued its painstaking search, Osama bin Laden had already established a remarkable degree of security and isolation within his Abbottabad compound. A fortress hidden in plain sight yet shielded by design from the prying eyes of the outside world. The property itself was an exercise in careful planning and calculated invisibility. With high walls surrounding every perimeter, narrow windows that offered minimal visibility, and a layout that allowed the residents to move about with complete privacy. From the outside, it appeared as nothing more than a large suburban home. But inside, every element of the compound had been engineered to prevent discovery and to control all aspects of daily life. There were no external cameras or modern monitoring devices, no internet connections or mobile phones to betray their presence, and no obvious signs of unusual activity that might alert neighbors or authorities. Bin Laden relied on a small, trusted network of couriers to carry messages and instructions, creating a communication system that was as discreet as it was effective, blending traditional practices with the necessities of evasion. Inside the compound, life unfolded with a mixture of routine and secrecy. As bin Laden balanced the ordinary rhythms of domestic life with the extraordinary demands of remaining the world's most wanted man, children played and studied under the watchful eyes of family members and tutors, while couriers, trained and loyal, moved discreetly in and out to deliver letters, memos, and digital data stored on thumb drives. The absence of modern communication tools, which might seem like a disadvantage, actually reinforced the security of the household, making it far more difficult for intelligence agencies to intercept or trace information. Every movement, every interaction, was carefully choreographed to maintain a low profile. Yet within this controlled environment, bin Laden continued to exert influence over his network and sustain his operations. The compound was not merely a home. It was a calculated ecosystem designed to maximize security while allowing a level of domestic normalcy. A paradox that underscored his ability to exist in two worlds simultaneously, one hidden and strategic, the other familiar and personal. What makes this arrangement particularly striking is the deliberate simplicity with which he lived, a stark contrast to the global figure of terror he had become. He did not rely on elaborate technological shields or ostentatious security. Instead, he trusted human networks, cultural knowledge, and disciplined routines to remain undetected. Neighbors saw only ordinary life, children playing, family gatherings, and the normal comings and goings of residents. Yet beneath this veneer of suburban normalcy, An extraordinary level of planning and operational security governed every detail. Bin Laden's ability to maintain this delicate balance for years, without drawing attention, illustrates the profound challenges that intelligence agencies face when dealing with an adversary who understands both human behavior and the nuances of local culture, and who can exploit them to maintain a hidden life while the world searches tirelessly for his whereabouts. This intricate setup, combining careful architecture, disciplined routines, and the strategic use of human couriers, was a key reason why Bin Laden eluded capture for so long. It highlights a central lesson in the hunt for elusive figures. Technology alone is insufficient. Understanding the psychology, culture, and day-to-day behaviors of a target is just as critical, if not more so. In the quiet streets of Abbottabad, behind unassuming walls, the world's most hunted man managed to construct a life that was simultaneously ordinary and extraordinary. A hidden chapter in modern history that would challenge intelligence operatives for nearly a decade before the final breakthrough occurred. Within the walls of the Abbottabad compound, life moved with a quiet rhythm that belied the extraordinary circumstances surrounding its most infamous resident. Osama bin Laden, the man whose name had become synonymous with global terror, inhabited a world that was carefully divided between the ordinary demands of family life and the extraordinary secrecy of his ongoing operations. He lived with multiple wives and children, creating a household that, on the surface, could almost pass for any large family in the region. Yet beneath this semblance of normalcy lay a highly controlled environment where every action was measured and every movement monitored. The children followed a structured routine of study and play, often guided by tutors, while Bin Laden himself took an active role in overseeing their education, reading, and even interpreting religious texts with them. This dual existence required an extraordinary balancing act, the nurturing of a domestic sphere, while simultaneously maintaining the security and secrecy required of a fugitive who had successfully evaded the most powerful intelligence agencies in the world. What emerges from accounts of life inside the compound is a portrait of a man who'd be both a devoted father and the orchestrator of far-reaching plans that had global consequences. While the outside world knew him only as a symbol of fear, inside, he participated in the mundane, intimate aspects of family life, guiding lessons, discussing poetry, and engaging with children in a way that humanized him in stark contrast to his public persona. His wives, each navigating their own roles within the household, became integral to the operation of this hidden domestic world, ensuring that children were cared for, routines maintained, and that the compound itself remained orderly and secure. Even in moments of ordinary family life, Bin Laden's consciousness of security never waned. Every outdoor activity, every interaction, was scrutinized and controlled, reinforcing a constant tension between safety and normalcy, between domestic care and the demands of a life in hiding. This duality created a striking juxtaposition. A household filled with the laughter and learning of children, yet existing under the shadow of an individual whose actions had reshaped global politics. The complexity of managing both spheres reveals the remarkable adaptability and discipline required to sustain such a life, highlighting the extraordinary human dimension behind a figure often reduced to headlines and historical footnotes. It also underscores the operational sophistication of Bin Laden's approach. By embedding himself within a familial context, he reduced suspicion, masked his activities, and exploited the very ordinariness of domestic life as a shield against detection. Observers would later note that he showed genuine care for his children, yet this care existed alongside letters, memos, and directives that continued to advance his broader objectives, a constant reminder of the stark contrast between personal devotion and ideological commitment. The Abbottabad compound, therefore, was more than a hideout. It was a carefully orchestrated microcosm where family and clandestine operations coexisted, each reinforcing the other in subtle ways. It was a world in which the ordinary and the extraordinary were inextricably linked, a place where routine lessons and bedtime stories took place against the backdrop of international manhunts. Intelligence operations and global conflict. This delicate balance, maintained over years, illustrates both the human complexity and the strategic acumen required to evade capture, offering a rare glimpse into the private life of one of history's most elusive figures, whose personal and operational worlds were intertwined in ways that challenged both understanding and imagination. For nearly a decade, the CIA search for Osama bin Laden was an exercise in patience, analysis, and relentless attention to detail, a pursuit that hinged on piecing together fragments of information from an almost invisible trail. Traditional methods of tracking the world's most wanted man proved inadequate. Satellite imagery. Intercepted communications and human intelligence offered tantalizing hints but rarely conclusive evidence. Then, slowly and methodically, attention turned to a seemingly mundane aspect of bin Laden's operation: his couriers. These individuals, trusted confidants who transported messages and digital data between bin Laden and the outside world, became the key to unraveling the web of secrecy that had long shielded him from detection. The couriers were not merely messengers. They were extensions of bin Laden himself, blending into local society while maintaining absolute loyalty and discretion. Their routines and movements carefully orchestrated to avoid any hint of the extraordinary tasks they carried out. Over the years, the CIA painstakingly identified and monitored these couriers, scrutinizing patterns in their travel, connections, and behaviors. Analysts combed through reports and cross-referenced every detail, building a profile of how the couriers operated, whom they met, and where their paths led. Every meal, every errand, every interaction became a potential clue. And slowly, a network emerged, revealing the hidden infrastructure that sustained one of the most elusive figures in modern history. The breakthrough came when this painstaking surveillance revealed links pointing not to the remote caves and mountain hideouts long assumed, but to a suburban compound in Abbottabad, Pakistan, a place that had, until then, appeared unremarkable in the eyes of neighbors and the outside world. The compound's unassuming exterior masked the extraordinary reality within, a carefully fortified residence that had shielded bin Laden, his family, and trusted aides for years, defying expectations and eluding intelligence operations. The significance of tracking the couriers cannot be overstated, for it demonstrated the power of human intelligence combined with methodical analysis. Whereas advanced technology and surveillance had failed to locate bin Laden directly, the subtle movements of these couriers provided a tangible link to his location, transforming what had been years of frustration into actionable intelligence. Analysts worked tirelessly to confirm the identities of the couriers, monitor their daily routines, and predict their interactions with the household. Each successful identification added another layer of confidence, narrowing the vast field of possibilities until the compound in Abbottabad emerged as the most probable location. This discovery was not the result of a single breakthrough, but of years of disciplined observation, interpretation of human behavior, and the relentless pursuit of patterns invisible to the casual eye. By following the couriers, the CIA was able to construct a map of activity that led directly to the compound, turning abstract intelligence into a concrete target for operational planning. The significance of this lead extended beyond the physical location. It revealed how bin Laden had structured his life and operations around human networks rather than technology. Emphasizing trust, loyalty, and routine as his primary shields, the revelation transformed the hunt from a theoretical challenge into a tactical opportunity, providing the foundation for the daring raid that would ultimately end the decade-long manhunt. The story of the couriers underscores the subtle but decisive ways in which human observation, patience, and analytic rigor can overcome even the most sophisticated attempts at concealment, bridging the gap between obscurity and revelation in the shadowed world of global intelligence operations. By the spring of 2011, after nearly a decade of painstaking intelligence work, months of surveillance, and countless hours of analysis, the pieces of the puzzle finally came together to a point where action became not just possible, but imperative. The CIA had identified the Abbottabad compound as the probable hideout of Osama bin Laden, a discovery that transformed years of frustration and indirect leads into a concrete opportunity for a decisive strike. Within the White House, President Obama faced an extraordinary decision, one that carried immense tactical, political, and historical weight. The risks were unprecedented, sending a team of Navy SEALs deep into Pakistani territory without notifying local authorities. Relying entirely on intelligence assessments and operational planning meant that any miscalculation could result in international conflict, life, or a failed mission that would reverberate across the globe. Yet inaction was equally consequential, as bin Laden remained the symbol and architect of a terror network that had inflicted unimaginable suffering and continued to inspire violent extremism. The planning of the raid required an extraordinary level of precision, coordination, and imagination. Months of simulations, rehearsals, and contingency exercises were conducted, with commandos training in full-scale replicas of the compound, rehearsing every possible scenario, and preparing for split-second decisions that could mean the difference between success and disaster. Every detail mattered, from the timing of the helicopter's approach to the routes taken through Pakistani airspace, to the sequence in which rooms would be cleared and targets identified. The SEALs were briefed extensively on the intelligence gathered over years, the number of couriers, the layout of the compound, the likely positions of family members, and the potential for unexpected resistance. Even the smallest variables, a locked door, a narrow staircase, or the presence of non-combatants, had to be anticipated and integrated into the operational plan. President Obama's decision was not taken lightly. Advisors debated the merits of alternative approaches, from airstrikes to drone attacks, each with its own set of risks and uncertainties. The choice to authorize a direct raid reflected a careful weighing of intelligence, operational capability, and the desire to minimize civilian casualties while ensuring the mission's success. The operation had to be swift, precise, and invisible to the Pakistani authorities until after the fact, heightening both the logistical and ethical stakes. The months leading up to the operation were marked by intense briefings, risk assessments, and the constant pressure of knowing that failure was not an option. When the night finally arrived, the SEALs departed under the cover of darkness, flying low to avoid radar and entering a country whose territory they could not officially breach without prior consent. The raid itself was executed with the culmination of years of preparation, intelligence, and courage, moving with a combination of stealth and calculated aggression. Every decision made within the compound, the entry points, the neutralization of threats, the protection of non-combatants, was informed by the intricate knowledge gathered over years of surveillance. The success of the mission was not merely a testament to the skill of the commandos, but also to the relentless dedication of analysts, agents, and strategists whose work behind the scenes had built the foundation for action. This operation highlighted the extraordinary convergence of patience, human intelligence, technological surveillance, and military precision, demonstrating how decades of planning and analysis could culminate in a single transformative event. The decision to proceed, fraught with risk yet grounded in meticulously gathered evidence, underscored the complex interplay between strategy, politics, and ethics that defines high-stakes operations at the highest levels of government. It was a moment when years of unseen labor, cautious observation and careful planning converged in a decisive action that would leave an indelible mark on modern history. In the early hours of May 1st, 2011, after months of painstaking surveillance, careful planning, and sleepless anticipation, the operation that had been years in the making reached its climax as Navy SEAL teams descended upon the Abbottabad compound under the cover of darkness. The tension was palpable, each commando acutely aware of the stakes and the precision required. For this was not just another mission, it was the culmination of nearly a decade-long hunt for the world's most wanted man. As the teams approached the high walls of the fortress like residents, every movement was deliberate, rehearsed, and synchronized, with intelligence informing every step, from entry points to the layout of rooms, to the number and likely positions of individuals inside. The SEALs moved swiftly, methodically clearing each space, and in the midst of the operation, they encountered the figure at the center of global attention, Osama bin Laden himself. Contrary to the images of defiance that had circulated in media portrayals and public imagination, bin Laden offered no resistance. The man whose name had inspired terror across continents, whose directives had orchestrated attacks that changed the course of history, faced the final moments of his life quietly, contained within the walls he had carefully constructed to elude capture. The SEALs executed their orders with precision, ensuring the safety of non-combatants and securing the compound while neutralizing the target. In a matter of minutes that seemed suspended in time, the operation succeeded where years of intelligence efforts had converged. The world's most elusive terrorist was no longer at large. Every action, from the careful identification of bin Laden to the swift engagement, reflected the synthesis of strategy, intelligence, and courage that had defined the mission from its inception. Following the operation, the treatment of bin Laden's remains became a matter of both cultural respect and strategic foresight. To prevent the compound or any burial site from becoming a focal point for followers or a symbolic shrine, his body was transported aboard a naval vessel and laid to rest at sea in accordance with Islamic customs, ensuring that his final resting place would not become a locus for ideology or extremism. This decision, though controversial to some, underscored the meticulous attention to detail that had guided the entire operation, from the surveillance of couriers to the execution of the raid itself. The burial at sea was not only a pragmatic measure but also a symbolic closure, an end to the physical presence of a man who had shaped global politics through violence, yet a reminder that his actions had left a lasting imprint on international security and policy. The raid's success resonated across the globe, a watershed moment in modern intelligence and military history, yet it was remarkable for the quiet, almost mundane circumstances of bin Laden's final moments. He did not die in battle, nor did he meet a dramatic end in some remote battlefield. Instead, he was taken in a suburban compound, a space he had carefully fortified and controlled for years. This juxtaposition between his public persona as a feared terrorist and the intimate, domestic environment in which he spent his last moments highlights the complexities of his life and the paradoxical nature of his existence. A man orchestrating global terror while simultaneously immersed in family life and the routines of concealment. The operation demonstrated not only the extraordinary capabilities of military precision, but also the indispensable role of human intelligence, patience, and persistence. It was a moment that validated years of painstaking work, proving that meticulous observation, analysis of subtle patterns, and the courage to act decisively could overcome even the most carefully constructed barriers. The world learned of bin Laden's death not through a battlefield triumph, but through an operation that combined intellect, strategy, and disciplined execution, closing a chapter in history while leaving enduring lessons about the intersection of human behavior, intelligence work, and the pursuit of justice in an unpredictable and complex world. After the dramatic conclusion of the raid, the Abbottabad compound, which had sheltered Osama bin Laden for years, was demolished in 2012, leaving behind nothing but memories, analysis, and lessons for the world. The physical structure that once harbored one of history's most notorious figures was erased, a tangible attempt to close a chapter in a long and complex story. Yet while the walls were reduced to rubble, the symbolic weight of what had transpired there remained far from diminished. Bin Laden's death marked a profound victory for global intelligence and counterterrorism efforts, a culmination of years of painstaking work, relentless surveillance, and strategic decision-making. It represented not just the removal of a man, but the dismantling of a carefully constructed network that had caused immense suffering and reshaped international security paradigms. For those who had dedicated years to the hunt, it was a moment of vindication, the realization of goals that had long seemed elusive, and a reminder of the perseverance, patience, and precision required to confront threats on a global scale. Yet even with bin Laden gone, his ideas did not vanish. The ideology he espoused, the strategies he implemented, and the shocking methods he popularized continue to echo through extremist movements around the world. The networks he inspired and the tactics he normalized targeting civilian populations, creating fear through media-driven attacks, and exploiting political vulnerabilities remain influential, illustrating that while individuals can be removed, the currents of ideology and influence are far more enduring. Scholars, analysts, and security experts continue to study these patterns, seeking to understand how extremism propagates and how societies can counteract its appeal. The story of bin Laden and his compound serves as a case study in the complexities of modern terrorism, the interplay between human intelligence and military action, and the enduring challenge of addressing ideological threats that transcend borders and generations. For viewers, this narrative is not only a historical account, but also a lens through which we can reflect on the intersection of strategy, morality, and global security. It demonstrates the extraordinary lengths to which nations will go to protect their citizens and uphold justice, while also reminding us of the persistent threats that continue to shape the world we live in. The hunt for bin Laden illustrates the profound impact that careful analysis, disciplined intelligence work, and decisive action can have in confronting seemingly insurmountable challenges. Thank you so much for watching this deep dive into the bin Laden raid and the decade-long intelligence operation that led to one of the most significant counter-terrorism successes in recent history. If you found this story compelling and insightful, please give this video a like, share it with others who are curious about global history and intelligence operations, and subscribe to the channel for more in-depth explorations of the events that have shaped our world. By subscribing, you will stay up to date with carefully researched, engaging content that brings historical events and modern developments to life, giving you a deeper understanding of the forces that continue to influence our lives today. Your support helps us continue to produce stories like this, shedding light on history's most complex and consequential events while providing thoughtful analysis and context. Do not forget to hit the like button, share this video with your friends, and subscribe to stay informed and inspired by the fascinating stories that history has to offer. Thank you again for joining us on this journey through one of the most remarkable intelligence operations of our time.